In New York, things are always moving. We see that every day in the sports scene. The Knicks, Rangers, Islanders, Nets have a game. Even the two seasons that are out of season, the NFL and MLB, it feels like the Jets, Giants, Mets, and Yankees are all up to something. Jets introduced their new head coach, Aaron Glenn, on Monday. Mets might make a trade for a star pitcher. Rangers, Islanders, playoff push. We'll talk about all of that right now on Mozarsky Memos. So let's start with the New York Jets, who hired Aaron Glenn from the Detroit Lions. Glenn was introduced as the official New York Jets head coach on Monday in Florham Park, New Jersey, where the Jets training facility is. You first really have to be impressed by the presser. And the first reason for that, and I said it on my last time I talked about the Jets, the biggest thing the Jets need out of a head coach is someone that sets a culture. And Aaron Glenn said it in his press conference, I want to set a culture. We run this blank. We are the blanking New York Jets. If you're a Jets fan, you have to be fired up. I'm a Jets fan. I'm fired up about it. There is a lot of things to figure out about the Jets, right? Their staff, their quarterback, their personnel. Their staff was just figured out. I'll talk about that in a second. But Aaron Glenn had a lot of soundbite worthy pieces that he said in these press conferences. And at the same time, he's really fired up to be here. For years, this was the job he wanted, and now he's here, and now it's time to prove it. Aaron Glenn, for years, has been this guy who is able to set a culture in a locker room. He was able to make the Lions defense one of the most feared in the league, even with all the injuries they dealt with. You saw it on Hard Knocks. You see it around the league, the way they respect him. You hope to get that with the New York Jets because, like I said last time, there is a lot of talent on the roster that probably isn't going anywhere. And the reason I say that is because new general manager Darren Moogie, coming over from the Denver Broncos, he was an executive there. He likes homegrown talent. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the first moves he made was to extend Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's going to make over $25 million a year. Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, Jermaine Johnson all up for an extension. And these guys are all in big years. And moreover, they're the key pieces for this team. And speaking of Glenn in specific, I'm assuming that new defensive coordinator Steve Wilks is going to call the plays at the start of the season. The Jets defense, there's so many pieces to work with, and Glenn has to be excited with that. You start at the bottom, Quinnen Williams. Then you got Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald. Up to the linebacker level, Quincy Williams. Jamie Sherwood's a free agent. He might come back. Safeties need to work. You have one of the best premier corners in the league in Sauce Gardner. The one thing that you could say for sure from Aaron Glenn's presser is the fact that he is going to put everything into this job, and that is so clear. He is going to try to establish a culture. He is going to try to get it the right personnel in, and he's trying right now. They got to decide the quarterback, like I said, but you got to be happy with him. Now let's just talk about some of the personnel the Jets brought in very fast, right? You got Aaron Glenn as head coach. As of today, Tanner Engstrand, who was the quarterback coach or the second offensive coach of the Detroit Lions this season to be the Jets offensive coordinator. You bring in Steve Wilks from Carolina, spent time in San Francisco and other places to be the defensive coordinator, and Chris Banjo from Denver, where he was a special assistant to be special teams. So the top of the Jets staff is complete, right? It starts with Darren Moogie at the top with Aaron Glenn, and then you have these coordinators. Do I like the hires? I do, because starting on the defensive side, like I said, Steve Wilks has a lot of experience in San Francisco, Carolina, other places, and the Jets defense has a lot of pieces. The Jets defense over the Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich era became the 32nd best defense to the first best defense back to the 30th best defense once Robert Saleh left. There are so many pieces to work with, and I said it a few minutes ago. And you got to be excited because as long as there is some sort of consistency and these players want to play for Steve Wilks and Aaron Glenn, I do think that this defense will be good. I think the problem with Jeff Ulbrich was not the fact that the players didn't want to play with him. I'm never going to go on record saying that because the players, apparently Jeff Ulbrich's a highly respected guy in the NFL too. It was the consistency change because you play in this Robert Saleh unit and now Jeff Ulbrich didn't give up play calling. And so you have to deal with that and head coaching responsibilities. And Jeff Ulbrich admitted that, by the way, in his press conference to become the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator, right? He said, looking back on it, the thing I'd change the most is that give up play calling ideas. And I said it on my podcast before. It's because he was spread too thin that the Jets defense faltered the way they did. In the first 5 games of the season, they were the number one defense in PFF, fell all the way down to like 26. So it goes to now Glenn and Wilks on the defensive side. Glenn will absolutely have a fold in that. He'll have a fold in all the team. That's what the head coach is supposed to do. Wilks is going to be the main guy, has a lot of talent to work with. As for the offensive side and Engstrand, I mean, like, it's hard to evaluate him because he was in Detroit, which was the number one scoring offense in the league this year. Lions had a historic season, 15-2. Wasn't the primary play caller, right? Ben Johnson was. Ben Johnson now in Chicago. Was he the secondary play caller? I guess, but Ben Johnson was running the show there. And now with Engstrand, you're sort of getting a guy with his first opportunity, and the Jets have went through this road before with Mike LaFleur, who they might have let go too early, depending on who you talk with the Jets about. Nate Hackett has been an offense coordinator. The Jets just haven't had a lot of stability, and now they're going this route with Engstrand, but Glenn likes him enough to do it. As for special teams, the Jets have lost a lot of special teams pieces. Irvin Charles got hurt during the season, but the Jets were a fine special teams unit. Kicking lost them games, right? Kicking lost in the Denver Broncos game. It lost in the New England Patriots game. It lost in the Buffalo Bills game. You just need consistency in all units, or as a bunch of head coaches say, complementary football. And now the Jets staff, you just got to get to work. And it starts with the quarterback position, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or something else, and we'll see. Let's talk some hockey now. The New York Islanders, are they a good hockey team? I still don't think so, but at least they are fighting, and they have put themselves right back in the NHL playoff race after getting 6 straight wins. The Islanders beat the Philadelphia Flyers Thursday night 3-0 to get their 6th straight win. 9 out of their last 11 had a 3-game winning streak, 2 straight losses, 6 straight wins. Islanders are now in front of the Rangers. Islanders have 53 points, Rangers have 52. Both these teams are gearing up for the playoff push. I don't have the NHL standings pulled up right now. I'm pulling it up as we speak. The wild card race is an absolute shit show in the East. From the number one wild card holder right now is Tampa Bay Lightning with 57 points, all the way down to the number 9 team, the Pittsburgh Penguins with 50. Only a 7-point difference, right? Any team has a chance to make the playoffs besides probably the Buffalo Sabres. That's no disrespect to Buffalo, but they've been bad. What does this mean? Every Eastern Conference game is important because you're either getting a big dog, someone who is in the playoffs, a metropolitan team or Atlantic team fighting for position, or these 10 wildcard teams fighting for 2 spots. That is absolutely insane. And now we switch our focus to the New York teams, starting with the Islanders. With 6 straight wins, the Islanders have put themselves right back in this fold, right? It almost looked like they were falling off, especially after 2 losses to the Ottawa Senators and Philadelphia Flyers at home. Those were both really bad, right? One of those games, the Islanders couldn't score at all. They got shut out. Versus Philadelphia, they gave up 5 goals. But what have the Islanders done so well over this past week and a half, dating back to January 18th? They responded. This is something I want out of the New York Rangers, and I've talked about it on Blue Line Station. The Islanders have not only responded, they are beating teams pretty handily, and it starts with their defense. They have not given up over 2 goals in a game in this 6-game winning streak. Shut out the Flyers last night, who scored 5 goals on them last time. The New York Islanders, they're playing good. And Ilya Sorokin has 5 straight wins now, going back to that January 20th game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yeah, the Islanders just keep playing good hockey. But the thing that surprises me most about them is just the way their core is able to contribute, right? Bo Horvat, Brock Nelson, any of these guys, Anders Lee. I'm going on and on and on. This Islanders core that I had questions about, they're able to make the contributions. And also, they're getting contributions up and down the lineup. Whether it is an offensive game that they lose. The Islanders for years have been this team that loses shootouts. Now they're scoring. They beat the Colorado Avalanche 5-2, 5 goals in that game, right? And then you talk about yesterday's game against the Philadelphia Flyers. And just to go through it right now, Ilya Sorokin, 23 saves, Gatcom, first NHL goal. They're getting contributions up and down the lineup, and that's why they've been able to get back into it. The Islanders, I'm pulling up the team stats right now. Outshot Philly 28-23. Took penalties, but their kill has been better. Their kill's still not good by any means, but they're getting it done, and they just keep on winning games. The one thing that I'll say about the New York Islanders is we're going to find out a lot about them over this next week and a half. Let me read off their next 6 games because they are very important. Every game is important, but just listen to how tough this schedule gets. The schedule gets tough on them. At the Tampa Bay Lightning, ahead of them in the standings. At the Florida Panthers, ahead of them in the standings. Versus the Vegas Golden Knights ahead. At Winnipeg, at Minnesota, versus Dallas. Those are 6 teams all ahead of the New York Islanders. 6 teams that are almost for sure going to make the NHL playoffs. You're facing the last 3 Stanley Cup champions. The last 4, actually. Florida, Vegas, last 4. They faced Colorado already. So you have all that at your disposal. These are tough games. And if you are the New York Islanders, what do you need to do in these games? You need your core to perform, whether it's Brock Nelson, Bo Horvat, Anders Lee, Kyle Palmieri, Matt Barzell, any of these guys, you need them to perform. And it's that simple. And you also need goaltending. And that's what Ilya Sorokin has become. Ilya Sorokin has signed an 8-year, 7-year contract a few years ago. He's one of the higher paid goaltenders in the league. He's making like $8 million a year. And he's making saves, which is so important. And he's not doing what Igor Shesterkin does, which is just keep the Rangers in games and win them games. But Sorokin, excuse me, is making the saves he's supposed to make. Going back to that loss against Philadelphia on the 16th, in his 5 wins, save percentage over 930 in all of them. And that's really big. Save count, 26, 30, 32, 23. And so when you're able to do stuff like this and able to have performances with a good goaltender, and these really good goaltenders in the league are able to steal their team's games. Igor Shesterkin, Connor Hellebuck, Jacob Markstrom, Ilya Sorokin, Jake Ottinger. I could go on and on and on. Having a good goalie goes really far in this league, especially for a team that can't score as much. If I was going to pull up the NHL team stats right now, I don't have it on my screen. The Islanders are near the bottom in goals scored. They have been this team for years, and it hasn't changed under Patrick Roy. But if they play good defense like they have on this winning streak, they have a chance to make the playoffs. Do I think the Islanders will make the playoffs? No, and I'll go on record saying that. They have a tough schedule. Like I said, those 6 games, and then it opens up a little. But at the same time, after they face these teams that are really good, they're facing wildcard contenders. They face the New York Rangers twice, Boston Bruins, and then they go out west. So it is a really, really trying time for every team out there. The Islanders, you're going to find out a lot about them against top competition, but they played really good defense and they're getting wins, and that's important game by game. Now let's talk about these guys, the New York Rangers. I'm a Rangers fan, cover them for Blue Line Station. The Rangers look dead in the water come December, but behind an 8-3-3 performance in the month of January, the Rangers have put themselves back in the playoff race. They're 1 point behind the Islanders, resume play on Saturday afternoon against the Boston Bruins. Talking about the New York Rangers for a second. If Igor Shesterkin is in the game, I will actually, let me look at the camera while I say this. If Igor Shesterkin is in the game, whether it's a regular season game or the playoffs that the Rangers somehow make there, they will have a chance to win any game in any series. The Rangers might not be a team built for the playoffs, but Igor Shesterkin is. He's been one of the best goalies in modern NHL history in the postseason. That's why he's the highest paid goaltender in the league. NHL salary cap helps that too. Rangers fans, Igor Shesterkin's a good contract because he could steal you any single game. If you look at the Rangers game log in their 8-3-3 month of January, right? You start against when Shesterkin came back against the Dallas Stars. Or no, not the Dallas Stars, New Jersey Devils. 2 goals allowed, 1 in overtime, beat a good team. Vegas Golden Knights, 30 saves, beat a good team on the road. Colorado Avalanche, Rangers got a point because Shesterkin played well. They gave up a goal in the last minute. Yeah, that sucked. Utah, same thing. Columbus, same thing. Ottawa, same thing. Philadelphia, same thing. The Rangers have played much better defense over this streak too, and that is so key, and it's gotten them back into the race. But at the same time, they lost 2 games against the Colorado Avalanche and Carolina Hurricanes where their defense was not particularly good. And it sent a lot of negative vibes through not through the Rangers locker room, just through the Rangers fan base. So let me get this clear. New York, as long as they have Igor Shesterkin, will win any game or could win any game, not will win any game. But at the same time, this team has a lot of flaws. It starts with their core of Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Artemi Panarin, Vincent Trocheck, Alexi Lafreniere. All have had spans this season where they haven't been particularly good. Lafreniere, since signing the contract, has gone pointless in a lot of games and has not been so great defensively, but at the same time, he's been fine. When people say he's the worst defensive forward on this team, I do not agree. Mika Zibanejad has absolutely plateaued, had a good start to 2025, has fallen off. Chris Kreider, only 17 points this year, 15 goals, 2 assists, obviously not good enough. Vincent Trocheck is the heart and soul on this team, and you can't expect him to go out there every night and get results when the rest of the Rangers core isn't doing it. Artemi Panarin and Alexi Lafreniere both struggled at times. Vincent Trocheck has taken a step back too because of that. If I had to choose one person in the Rangers core to blame the most for their lack of success this season, or they're not where they're supposed to be, it has to be Zibanejad, one of the lowest plus-minus ratings in the NHL, has failed to score some goals, just hasn't been so great. I think the biggest thing that the New York Rangers have to do, and I've said it once and before, respond to really, really tough losses, right? The Colorado Avalanche, you come back from a 2-0 deficit and a 4-2 deficit, and you lose with 16 seconds left after having a power play. It was a mistake. It was bad. Get over it. Then you get shut out by the Carolina Hurricanes 4-0, when Igor Shesterkin made a lot of saves. That could have been 6-0, but at the same time, I thought the Rangers were the better team through 40 minutes of this game. But it doesn't matter. A loss is a loss. And if you're going to say that Igor Shesterkin can win you games, the Rangers, when they outplay a team, it doesn't matter if you can't score. The Rangers, to get back in this, starting with playing Boston twice, then Pittsburgh, then Columbus, then Buffalo, then Pittsburgh again, the Islanders. You have a stretch where you're facing a bunch of wild card contenders. You got to, one, rely on your better goaltending. Two, play good defense, because the Rangers' defensive core, whether it's Adam Fox, Ryan Lindgren, Will Borgen, who signed that 5-year, $4.1 million extension, Keandre Miller, who's been better, Braden Schneider, Urho Vakanainen, they've been better too. So play better defense. And last, this core has to get going, because as has been the case for 5 years now with this Rangers core, you go as far as your veterans go. You can't rely on your young guys as much. And I think that the New York Rangers have to realize that. And I think everybody in the hockey world knows that the Rangers will go as far as their core comes, especially if they make the playoffs. Yeah, Igor Shesterkin can win you any game, but at the same time, you need these guys to perform, and that's a very big key. Will the Rangers make the playoffs? I'm not going to say something about that, but I do think that Igor Shesterkin gives them a chance in any game. They have the goaltending advantage over 29 out of 30 teams in the league, or 20, or whatever number it is. And yeah, I still think that they have the potential, maybe not to go all the way, because there's so many flaws on this team that I could talk about in another episode, but it's a playoff push now. Last segment for the day. The New York Mets have reportedly been in trade talk for Padres star pitcher Dylan Cease. Cease signed a contract with San Diego to avoid arbitration, making $13.7 million this year. Becomes an unrestricted free agent after the end of the 2025 MLB season. There have been talks about the New York Mets trading for Cease, and I like this move. The Mets still need to bolster their pitching staff a lot, right? Dylan Cease had a 3.47 ERA, 14-11 record with the San Diego Padres through a no-hitter. He was really good. He was the Padres' number one, arguably number two pitcher. The New York Mets, do they have an established number one? No. They do have a fine 1-2 punch in Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea, but neither of those are 1A. And if you're able to pair Dylan Cease with that, you have a really good lineup. But at the same time, one thing that caught me on the Mets Amazing Day that they host Frankie Montas saying they have 5 number ones. This team has confidence in their pitching staff, whether it's the starters or the bullpen. You start with the starters, right? Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Frankie Montas, Griffin Canning, Clay Holmes. You have 6 guys right there. You need 5 of them to hit. You still have Taylor McGill too. And this is what David Stearns does. He's done it in his time in Milwaukee. He does it in his time in New York. You bank on pitchers that have the potential, have not panned out to be an ace, but they come to the Mets, they work with Jeremy Hefner, and they become really good. You saw that with Luis Severino. You saw that with Jose Quintana. You saw that with Sean Manaea, who signed a 3-year, $75 million contract to stay here. But if the Mets are able to get Dylan Cease, they are going to be a very good baseball team. They're going to be a very good baseball team regardless, right? You talk about their offense: Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Brandon Nimmo, Mark Vientos, maybe Pete Alonso. They just signed Nick Madrigal as a util spot, so rip Candelita. I don't think Jose Iglesias is coming back. Still got some stuff to figure out there. Pitching-wise, though, you have 6 starters with the potential of having a real rotation. I think Senga, Manaea, Peterson are all shoo-ins to be that 1-2-3 punch. After that, Montas probably the 4 and Holmes probably the 5. And so these guys, after working with Jeremy Hefner and others, I think it's going to be key. And so with the Mets, trade for Dylan Cease, yeah, I think it could work, especially since he's a number one pitcher. That'll wrap us up for today. It's interesting to see the Rangers and Islanders playoff push. Jets have new management, new head coach in, and the Mets or Yankees might make a move. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe and share with your friends. I also have a podcast with Blake McQuarrie and Tucson Fancher in the Northwestern Medill program, Talk Ball Tweakers. I'll encourage you to go over there to see me talk college basketball, NBA, and NFL. But as always, like, subscribe, and follow to the YouTube, TikTok, and Spotify. And thank you so much, guys. Have another episode out soon.